I didn't fall in love with her. That's what I kept telling myself. I was told she needed someone. Someone safe. Someone who wouldn't leave. When people at work spoke about her, their voices always dropped. Like they were talking about a fragile object instead of a person, half paralyzed, desk, near the window, quiet, recently, transferred. That was all I knew before the invitations started appearing on my calendar, coffee breaks that weren't mine, lunches I never scheduled, team outings where I was always seated next to her. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then I realized it was design. Colleagues smiled too much. Managers watched too closely. Someone joked once, "You've got a good heart." She's lucky. That sentence stuck to me like a label I never asked for. Her name was Lena. She never asked me for anything. That was the strange part. No favors, no sympathy, no stories meant to soften me. She spoke calmly, worked efficiently, and when she struggled to move, she handled it with a practiced dignity that made my discomfort feel childish. One evening after work, she looked at me and said something that dismantled every rumor I had swallowed. "You don't have to stay," she said quietly. "If this is pity, I'd rather be alone." There was no accusation in her voice, just exhaustion. That was the moment I realized how deep the lie ran. I had been convinced she needed me, but she was the only honest person in the room. Still, I stayed, and I hated myself for not knowing why. At work, the atmosphere shifted. Whispers followed us. Promotions stalled. Meetings excluded me. My manager's tone hardened. While executives suddenly became polite, the dangerous kind of polite that smiles before cutting you off at the knees, I started noticing things. Emails sent late at night. Closed-door meetings that ended when I walked past. Lena's access permissions quietly reduced. Her tasks reassigned without explanation. And then I saw it. An internal email forwarded by mistake. My name highlighted. Hers attached. "She's a useful shield," one executive wrote. Public perception. Disability optics? Keep him close. He won't ask questions. My chest tightened as I read the rest. I hadn't been chosen because I was kind. I had been selected because I was convenient. The relationship everyone thought was romantic was actually camouflage. While upper management siphoned funds and manipulated contracts, Lena's presence and my association with her redirected scrutiny. Any complaint against the department was met with stories about inclusivity and compassion. Meanwhile, the real crimes moved quietly. I felt sick. Anger came first. Hot, humiliating anger. Not at Lena, but at myself. I replayed every moment, wondering how much of it had been staged. How much of her vulnerability had been used against both of us. I confronted her the next day, expecting denial. She didn't deny anything. "I figured it out weeks ago," she said. "They did the same thing at my last company." Her words landed heavier than any accusation. "They move me where they need silence," she continued. "People don't question decisions when someone like me is involved. They assume kindness is happening. Then why stay?" I asked, my voice breaking despite myself. She looked at her hands before answering. "Because leaving means they win quietly, and staying alone is louder than disappearing." That was when I understood. She wasn't the reason I was trapped. She was the only one resisting. But resistance has a cost. 2 days later, HR called her in. Performance review. Sudden concerns. Vague language. The same playbook I had just begun to recognize. They weren't firing her yet. They were isolating her first. I could walk away. No one would blame me. In fact, they would praise me for trying. That's when the thought hit me, the cruel simplicity of it. Kindness, when expected, becomes leverage, but kindness chosen becomes threat. I stopped responding emotionally. I started listening. Every meeting, every pause, every contradiction. I saved emails, screenshots, timestamps. I learned who avoided eye contact and who over-explained. Corporate betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers and hopes you're too polite to hear it. Lena never asked what I was doing. She just worked. Slower than others, yes, but sharper. She noticed patterns before I did. She corrected mistakes without credit. She absorbed tension like she'd trained for it her entire life. One evening, as the office emptied, she said something I will never forget. "They think I'm weak because my body doesn't move right. But weakness is needing silence to survive." That sentence changed me. Not because it was inspiring, because it was true. The next morning, I received an offer. A quiet one. A promotion. Different department. Better pay. Immediate transfer. The condition was unspoken but obvious. Leave her. Leave this mess. Let it stay buried. I looked across the office at Lena, struggling slightly with a file drawer, refusing help like always. That was the moment the story stopped being about being tricked. It became about choice. I deleted the promotion email. And for the first time since this began, I stopped feeling used. I felt responsible, not as her savior, not as her partner, but as a witness. And witnesses don't look away. I didn't confront anyone. That's what they expected me to do. People who shout are easy to remove. People who threaten leave traces. I chose to disappear in plain sight. I became quieter than usual, more agreeable, the version of myself corporate systems trust the most. While they thought I had accepted the promotion rejection as defeat, I was collecting proof with patience that looked like obedience. The executives underestimated one thing. They believed loyalty flowed upward. They never considered that it could move sideways, between two people they had already dismissed. Lena never asked me what I was planning. She didn't need to. She began forwarding files she technically wasn't supposed to access anymore. Old compliance reports, archived budget sheets, vendor contracts that didn't align with payment timelines. She labeled nothing. She trusted me to understand. And I did. The betrayal wasn't small. It was systematic. Fake diversity initiatives used to secure grants. Disabled employees shuffled to soften audits. Funds rerouted through shell departments. Every kind gesture turned into a shield against accountability. They weren't helping Lena survive the system. They were using her to protect it. I created a mirror they couldn't recognize. An anonymous compliance report detailed but emotionless. No accusations, just facts, numbers, dates, cross-references. Enough truth to force questions. Not enough to reveal the source. I sent it externally. Then I waited. When the investigation started, panic moved faster than honesty ever had. Meetings multiplied, smiles vanished. Executives spoke in clipped sentences, pretending confidence while bleeding certainty. HR froze all internal transfers. The promotion offer I had declined suddenly reappeared. This time urgent, almost pleading. I ignored it again. Lena was called in once more. This time, not to be warned, but to be observed. They were trying to decide whether she knew too much. She came back pale but composed. "They're scared," she said calmly. That's new. For the first time, I saw fear where power used to live. 2 weeks later, the truth surfaced publicly. Not loudly. No dramatic arrests. Just resignations. Personal reasons. Health concerns. Strategic restructuring. The corporate language of guilt. No one mentioned Lena, no one mentioned me. And that was the point. I expected relief. What I felt instead was something heavier. Responsibility doesn't end when the danger passes. One morning, Lena's workstation was gone. Not reassigned, removed. HR said it was an optimization decision. They offered her a remote role with fewer hours, less visibility, and no future. A quiet exile disguised as accommodation. I watched her read the email. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply nodded, like someone who had expected this outcome all along. That was the moment I understood the final cruelty of the system. It punishes you not for losing, but for surviving without permission. I didn't escalate. I didn't appeal. I resigned. No explanation. No farewell email. Just a clean exit that raised more questions than anger ever could. Before leaving, I forwarded one last message. To the board, to external auditors, to every department that had hidden behind the language of kindness while practicing exploitation. It contained no emotion. Just one sentence at the end. Kindness is not a branding strategy. It's a responsibility. I never told Lena what I did. I didn't want gratitude. Gratitude creates debt, and debt recreates imbalance. Weeks passed. I started over somewhere smaller, less impressive, more honest. No one there knew my past, and I didn't offer it. One afternoon, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single note. I took the remote role, it read. Not because I was pushed, but because I chose rest. I'm consulting now on accessibility, on ethics. They listen when I speak. Funny how survival becomes authority. At the bottom, she added one final line. You stayed when you didn't have to. That mattered. I sat with that sentence for a long time. Not because it praised me, but because it redefined what heroism actually looks like. There were no cameras, no applause, no viral moment. Just two people refusing to let a system turn kindness into weakness. Lena never fully recovered physically. That wasn't the miracle of this story. The miracle was something quieter. She stopped apologizing for existing. And I stopped believing that doing the right thing required recognition. Corporate betrayal thrives on silence that protects power. But silent heroism is different. It doesn't protect anyone except the truth. And sometimes the greatest act of kindness isn't staying. It's standing, quietly, firmly, until the lie collapses under its own weight. That's the part no one teaches you. Kindness is not about being needed. It's about choosing integrity when walking away would be easier. And the people who do that rarely get remembered. But they change everything anyway.